Okay, you've opened this door. First, let's go back to March 3rd. You were present for Benjamin Netanyahu's speech in the U.S. Congress. It seemed on watching the televised broadcast there was electricity in the Congress. Am I right?
Oh, I can verify. Absolutely, there was electricity. The White House was trying to put together a boycott so that Democrats would not attend the speech of the prime minister. And the White House worked actively to get Democrats to say publicly that they wouldn't attend the Netanyahu speech. This is a joint session of Congress. First of all, I'd like to clarify. The president has no say, zero, none, on who is invited to come to speak to a joint session of Congress. We have three branches of government: the executive, which is the president, Congress, which is the House and the Senate together, and the judicial branch. The Speaker of the House, John Boehner, has full right and authority to invite anyone he wants to speak to Congress in a joint session. The president does not have the right to approve or disapprove who speaks to Congress. All of a sudden, there was this very odd reaction from the White House where President Obama felt impelled to say that Netanyahu should not come. At the same time, John Boehner had also invited the Pope to come and speak to a joint session of Congress this upcoming September. John Boehner didn't notify the White House about the Pope coming, nor did he notify the White House about Netanyahu coming. The White House wasn't upset about the Pope coming, but they were extremely upset about Netanyahu coming. So the question was, why would the White House be so upset? Israel is America's #1 ally in the world. It's a Democrat nation. And the answer is, quite simply, President Obama didn't want the truth about his very bad deal with Iran to be disclosed. And he knew that no more powerful voice in the world would tell the truth about this very bad deal to give Iran a nuclear weapon than Netanyahu. And that is exactly what he did. The room was electric. I will tell you, there wasn't one empty seat in the House. It was filled with Democrats, Republicans, the diplomatic corps. I'm a retired member of Congress, but I retain rights to be able to go on the floor of the House of Representatives. When I saw Democrats publicly coming out and saying would not attend the speech, I decided I would go in as a show of force. I think for all of your listeners who are listening right now, Jan, they want to know what can they do to support the Jewish state. No longer being in Congress, I too wanted to know what could I do to support the Jewish state. And I believe that if I went and was physically in the chamber, that could be a part of blessing Israel. And so I went, and I actually had the best seat in the House. I stood in the very back of the chamber. If people watch the State of the Union address, there's double doors that the president enters when he comes into the chamber. I stood right by those double doors. So when the doors opened and Prime Minister Netanyahu walked into the chamber, I was the very first person that he saw. I shook his hand. I thanked him for coming into the chamber to speaking to us. I let him know that you are among friends. You are welcome here, and we can't wait to hear what you have to say. So thank you, and be encouraged when you're here. You're surrounded by friends.
All right.
He gave his remarks at the front of the room. When he came back, I also had a chance to be able to hold the Prime Minister's hand and thank him. I thanked him, and my words were, "Thank you, Prime Minister. Finally, someone has told the truth to the world about this very bad deal with Iran getting a nuclear weapon. Thank you for informing people." My goal was to be an encourager, and I was able to speak to the Prime Minister when he came in and speak to him when he left the chamber, words of encouragement, and he went in fairly quickly and out fairly quickly. So I felt very privileged to be in the position that I was in.
Well, clearly, when it comes to this deal with Iran, I'm going to play a 2-minute soundbite here of Netanyahu speaking about Iran at this gathering. You were at the House of Representatives. Michelle, I feel like I've fallen down into Alice's Wonderland and the Mad Hatter is conducting business today because nothing makes sense. Here we are. Benjamin Netanyahu is not saying death to America. Iran is saying death to America. By the time this program airs, there's very likely going to be this very well accepted peace treaty, which is a joke, between Iran and America, and parts of the other Western world are going along with it as well. Let's just play clip number 4, Netanyahu warning America and the world why this is crazy.
Iran's regime is as radical as ever. Its cries of death to America, that same America that it calls the great Satan, as loud as ever. Now, this shouldn't be surprising. because the ideology of Iran's revolutionary regime is deeply rooted in militant Islam. And that's why this regime will always be an enemy of America. And don't be fooled. The battle between Iran and ISIS doesn't turn Iran into a friend of America. Iran and ISIS are competing for the crown of militant Islam. One calls itself the Islamic Republic, the other calls itself the Islamic State. Both want to impose a militant Islamic empire, first on the region and then on the entire world. They just disagree among themselves who will be the ruler of that empire. In this deadly game of thrones, there's no place for America or for Israel, no peace for Christians, Jews, or Muslims who don't share the Islamist medieval creed. No rights for women, no freedom for anyone. So when it comes to Iran and ISIS, the enemy of your enemy is your enemy. The difference is that ISIS is armed with butcher knives, captured weapons, and YouTube, whereas Iran could soon be armed with intercontinental ballistic missiles and nuclear bombs. We must always remember, I'll say it one more time, the greatest danger facing our world is the marriage of militant Islam with nuclear weapons. To defeat ISIS and let Iran get nuclear weapons would be to win the battle but lose the war. We can't let that happen.
What's so difficult, Michelle Bachmann, about understanding that? That makes perfect sense, other than to what appears to be the Obama administration, which is dead set on capitulating and appeasing the mullahs in Iran.
That same weekend when I was in Washington to hear the prime minister, I also attended the AIPAC meeting. The president did not go to AIPAC. He normally does. The vice president wasn't sent. The secretary of state wasn't sent. The president was mad and miffed at AIPAC too, the American-Israeli Political Action Committee. And so what the president did is he sent Susan Rice, his national security advisor. Susan Rice was trying to explain the nuclear agreement as though this was a good thing. She was bragging that within 10 years, Iran would have the nuclear bomb. It won't be 10 years. It'll be far sooner than that. I believe it could even be within 1 year they will have a nuclear bomb. But at no point should Iran ever have a nuclear weapon. That's what Prime Minister Netanyahu is saying. For over 2 decades, Iran has defied UN resolution after UN resolution when it comes to a nuclear program. They have lied, they have cheated, they have advanced their nuclear program in ways that are unthinkable. They've continued to spin centrifuges. They've continued to enrich uranium.
Right.
They have continued to do ballistic missile research. They also have not been willing to give the IAEA, that's the International Atomic Energy Agency, access to their programs. Iran has been consistent in their desire and stated goal of obtaining a nuclear weapon. They will not pull back. And President Obama, an American president, for the first time is doing everything he can to move mountains to ensure that the radical mullahs in Iran achieve their dream, which is a nuclear weapon. Nuclear